every time I'd put myself in an uncomfortable situation, it had meant that I'd had like such an amazing experience afterwards. And it changed me and made me grow. So I was like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this.
Welcome to the Love Atlas. Each episode brings you thought leaders, experts, and everyday people that share their unique perspective and profound insights. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Kelly Wickramasuriya, and she's a business owner and she actually travels full time. So that is amazing. Right now, she's currently in Bali and she's going to tell us all about her personal development experience. So, Kelly, tell us how you got started.
I remember like hanging around with some people who are entrepreneurs and they could work like their own hours. They
Yeah.
had their own freedom. They chose their own prices. And I was like, am I dreaming about the right thing? I was like, is this really what I like want to aspire for? So then obviously I started learning a bit more about all of this, and then I set my new goal to be that like by the time I finish university I want to be able to travel around the world and like work from my laptop.
Wow.
So I used that time at university to just like really spend it like researching and learning, and I think it was in my second year that I just decided to like fly out to Thailand on a one-way ticket, and then I just did the rest of my uni online and just focused on building a business and working different remote jobs to try and like sustain it all.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And then what about your traveling journey as far as connecting with people? And, this podcast is all about love and relationships. I love spreading that awareness. So how has that journey been for you?
It's been incredible because I think like when I had to leave, I had to pretty much like let go of all my relationships back home,
Yeah.
which was really hard to do because obviously like you're letting go of everything that you know, everyone that like is close to you, in hopes that like you're gonna connect with people who are a bit more on your frequency. Because like I feel like one of the things that I realized when I was like in that position of like transition, realizing that I wanted more, I didn't feel like I could connect properly with all like my people back home. And
Hmm.
then when I started traveling, it was kind of just a case of like discovering more people who are on the same wavelength as me, and I could actually have these deeper conversations, and like we had the same like aspirations in life and things like this.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like it was definitely a hard journey because I had to let go of a lot of people and be lonely for a little while. But it
Yeah.
was so worth it because like I've met so many amazing people, and like it just goes to show that like when you let something go, you always get blessed with like greater.
Yeah, yeah. And then what about as far as I mean, if you're traveling, you're obviously like not in one place for a very, very long time. You're always on to the next adventure. So when you connect with these people and incredible people, as you mentioned, you can have such deep conversations with them, but then you do have to along the way say goodbye as well. So that must be tough.
I mean, I don't know. I've got quite good at saying goodbye to people because of traveling.
Yeah.
Um, but it doesn't actually get that tough because I feel like where I've got very secure in my relationships, I can feel that love and like connection from like anywhere in the world. Like I know that the people that am close with, like it doesn't matter where we are. And I feel like if I hadn't gone traveling, then I don't think I would have had that security. Like if I didn't see my friend for like a month, I would probably be thinking in my head like, oh, are we friends anymore?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How have different cultures that you've encountered impacted your travel experience? And I'm sure you come across so many people from all over the world and with so much wisdom and like they have a lot to share.
Yeah, a lot. I would say it's been like really eye-opening. Because obviously when you grow up, you're in this little bubble of like seeing the people that are very similar to you. And then so many people have like really opened my perspective on like how the whole world is so different, but like so similar.
Yeah.
And also just realizing that like everyone pretty much has the same problems. Everyone's always like thinking of themselves and all the rest of that. And it's also been like very like nice to kind of realize that you can have a completely different language, like not even speak the same language as somebody, but you can still like connect with them like quite
Yeah.
well. And that's been like really nice as well, because obviously I think it's very easy to dismiss people who can't speak your language and only try and speak to people who can. But it's really beautiful to like see and like try and connect with people who are completely different.
Yeah, yeah, and you're such a beautiful girl, so I'm sure that like, uh a lot of guys probably reach out to you and like how is that the dating scene? Are you single? Are you in a relationship? Or you're just like, I'm on this solo travel journey and that's it.
So I actually, most of my traveling, I've been in like a long distance relationship. Um, but I'm actually single right now. So like it's been like a bit of like an on and off kind of relationship because the way I actually started traveling, before I flew out to Thailand by myself was I one of the guys that I had met, we became really, really close and he took me to Dubai for like 2 months. And we ended up like having like a really like long relationship after that where like I think he flew out to Bali and like we spent that time together, went to Thailand together.
Yeah.
Um, but then I'd say like 70% or 80% of the time I was traveling alone because we was always in different countries.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, like it's definitely been like I've had a lot of male attention. Um, but I've
Yeah.
not been interested, I'd say like 90% of the time. Like I've not been pursuing anything like that. I think only recently have I decided to kind of open myself back up to that side of
Yeah.
things. But even traveling like in a long distance relationship is so hard.
Yeah. So tell us a
But
little bit about that, like being in a long distance relationship and traveling. Obviously, the only form of communication is through like obviously texting, FaceTiming, and time zones are so complicated as well because I mean even for us to connect, like the first time we weren't able to, and then finally I was looking at your timing and I'm like, oh my goodness, like so late, but we're gonna make it work out.
yeah. No, I totally agree. It is super hard because obviously like you're not really on the same like way of life. Like obviously I'm
Yeah,
doing something completely different every day. We're not really able to see what each other are doing or anything like that. And I
yeah,
think I think the hardest part is genuinely just kind of having somebody who's there but just never there. So
yeah,
like you feel like you have this really strong connection, but then you wake up every day like by yourself and you're like, do I?
yeah,
So I think yeah, it's definitely been challenging, and I don't think I would actually do it again. As somebody who's like now out of that, like
yeah, yeah.
I don't think it's a very easy thing to do,
Hmm.
and yeah, it definitely took a toll on me, like having to go like be from like spending every single day together in like one country to then like spending like 3 4 months apart, like and
Yeah.
then just doing life by myself again. Like I'm comfortable doing it, but like when you're in a relationship, who wants to?
Yeah, no, and it's very true what you're saying because also I think it kind of takes away from your enjoyment, wanting to do things freely and not have someone on your mind constantly. And being in a long distance relationship, I'm sure you have the other person on your mind. As you mentioned, you wake up in the morning, you're like, do we even have that connection? Like, it doesn't even, it's just kind of like turns into like a good morning, good night, and like talking nonstop. And traveling is nice without always have being on your phone. Constantly being on technology never really helps. You actually experiencing and immersing yourself into like whatever country you're in. So I completely understand that. And then tell us a little bit about lessons you've learned along the way or any experiences that might have, I guess, made you have some sort of a realization and someone you might have come across that has changed your life.
I've had so many realizations. I pretty much have one like every month or something.
Love that.
But I'd say like the most recent one was probably um when I went through like the breakup and I decided to like go through it properly this time and just like actually like yeah, go ahead with everything.
Yeah.
I went and watched like Eat, Pray, Love, and it gave me such a different perspective on life
Yeah.
because when I first started traveling, I used to like romanticize life. Like I would like wake up in the morning and I would like go out and I just feel so like I'm the main character and there's like a camera crew following me. And then I got to this point where like I've been traveling for like 3 years now. Like Bali isn't a new country to me. Like it's like I know everywhere I can drive around without like a map and like it just felt so like comfortable and normal. And I think I'd like forgotten about how to romanticize my life. So after watching that, I like picked that back up again. And I think that that's been like a really big perspective shift because I like stopped being the main character of my movie and
Mhm.
then I just started again and it was a really great perspective to kind of like change.
Yeah, I love that movie. I when I watched that movie, I was just like, oh my goodness. Like it makes you actually like just kind of get out of your comfort zone and really step into being like learning about yourself and who you are as a person. It's such a good movie and it's absolutely inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, like with that, like I had a lot for a long time. Like I think I do well with my business, but like I think I'd always kind of with my relationship, like been believing more in like my partner. So I think with all of that, whenever I watch things like that, it's very empowering and it kind of made me realize that like I can go and do everything. Like I just need to step into my power and then everything's gonna like flow.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think everything does flow as soon as you um start focusing on your journey. And it's not about being selfish. It's about really loving yourself so much to the point where the other person is adding value to your life, but you've already filled up your entire cup. And I think that's
Yeah.
when you realize that's when you attract the right partner in your life as well, when you're really content with who you are as a person. And I think when you're not so content and you're very flip-floppy, that's when you attract not the best people in your life at times. When, as you mentioned, like when you're not on the same wavelength and you can't even have a deep conversation with someone, it's so important to be able to talk to someone and they understand you where you're coming from, rather than sometimes we get ourselves in situations where there's no compatibility and there's no sense of understanding, but we continue because we're thinking, oh, maybe this is the right person and maybe like no one else will come down the road, but that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, 100%. I think I had that a lot where I was like feeling that I that was like my one person and I couldn't have more. And then it was like when I watched Deep Pray Love, I was like, okay, I like channeled all of this. And then I started being much more magnetic. Like my energy for the couple of weeks before, or like month or two before, however long it was, I like it was very like low and I wasn't really like being that attractive, magnetic kind of person. And when I was pouring all of that energy back into myself and focusing on loving myself and loving like my own life and enjoying everything that I do, like everything just started like flowing back. Like I literally had like like so many signs and so many like opportunities to like realize that like I can have so much more.
Hmm.
So yeah, I really do think like when you're loving yourself, like you attract people who like appreciate that and you attract like the right everything, you just attract everything.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. Recently, I've just, since I started this whole podcasting journey, the people that I've been attracting in my life, I was just telling one of my friends yesterday, I'm like, oh my goodness, like everyone is so positive, incredible. We meet each other on such a deep level when we're having conversations, and it's so genuine and pure. And when I think back to in my 20s, the friends I had, and again, like that was definitely more of like, just learning about myself and not really focusing on the depth aspect of it. And when I think back to it, I'm like, oh wow, I was missing that piece. And I didn't know about it. I didn't know about loving myself. I didn't know, you know, everyone talks about loving yourself, but it's really hard to figure out how to even love yourself. It's not an easy process to be like, oh, well, self-care, I'm going to take a bath today and take care of myself, and then I'll be in love with myself all of a sudden. It's an everyday thing. It's an everyday conversation that you have with yourself and reflect, and also incredible people around you to elevate yourself even more. So
Yeah.
definitely a beautiful thing. And as you mentioned even earlier, traveling. I haven't traveled, I don't travel as much, but I have traveled. I've been to Egypt, Jordan, Greece, and that was my favorite trip. I went a few years ago, and just the people that I came across, and you hear a lot of negative news on social media, but then when you're actually at the country and you come across people, you're like, wow, they are so beautiful, they are so sweet and kind. And we're so influenced by media at times that we're scared to even go to a certain country. And as women, especially, my parents were they were a little scared, like, oh, you're going here, like, be careful. But you, as long as you're careful and as long as you have good people around you, you meet so many amazing people. And I think going into it from a positive lens rather than just being so scared of seeing all the news, then you're going to attract that negativity into your life as well.
Yeah, 100%. I do think it's really like crazy, like the people that you meet. Like in Bali as well. I met some amazing people. And like one of the things that I've realized, I've traveled like to a lot of different countries, but like here it's so like third world. Like I've been to like Dubai and Singapore and where it's like a lot nicer, a lot more rich. But
Yeah.
like the people are so busy, like they're not as happy and things like that. And in Bali, people have like nothing. And there's literally no like care in the world for doing anything here. Like you're literally just wander down to the beach barefoot. Like it's that kind of vibe. And everyone is so happy. Everyone, like these Indonesians that have literally nothing, they just like sleep in their shop, but like they wake up and they smile and they're so excited to talk to you. And
Yeah.
it just makes you realize like you can have you don't need everything to be happy.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny that you say that. Just last week, and again, as I mentioned, I live in Los Angeles. I was walking around here, and then this older man approached me because I was just walking around. I was just smiling. I thought about something funny, and I was just like smiling. And he's like, we don't see that as much anymore. And he's like, it's so nice to see you smiling and enjoying your day because you just cheered me up. And that cheered me up even more in return when he made that comment. And I'm like, we need to be able to just smile and like say hi to people and be more approachable. And it's not always about that hustle. It shouldn't be always about the hustle mentality. Yes, we have to make money, but at the same time, as you mentioned, like people who don't even have they're sleeping at their store, waking up in the morning with a smile on their face. And that's, to me, that's when you win life, when you can just be happy in whatever circumstance situation you are in.
Yeah, 100%. I
Yeah.
think as well when you travel, like especially to these places, like one of the things that I find like most fulfilling is just like doing nice things for these types of people. Like there's some kids that like live near where I live and like they all like stop and like talk to me whenever they see me and then like they like whenever I drive past they were like screaming my name and then I'm like went to shops and like bought them all like gifts and it's like so cute because I don't know, like that's such a genuine relationship, do you know what I mean? Like between these little kids, but they're just so sweet.
Yeah, no, and that's just such a, I mean, I'm a teacher. I teach students elementary, and it's the best feeling in the world when you just to see the kids smile, so innocent and so sweet and kind. And like when they write me notes like, Miss Sharma, thank you so much for being the best teacher ever. I don't need anything else. I'm like, I that's all I need in my life. And we forget that that's what life is about. Like even as adults, more responsibilities mean that we have to put in even more of an extra effort to remind ourselves that we are still like that kid. We're still, even though we're, grown and we are like, we have all these things that are coming into our life and more challenges. We have to always ground ourselves and remember and remind ourselves that I'm still that little girl, like when I was 6 years old, 7 years old, running around and playing and having fun. And just going back to your childhood and remembering the good times is always beneficial to even up to, it's kind of like a form of meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely.
So back to finding the right partner, what are some really important qualities are you looking for in a partner?
Okay, I actually have like the longest list. And one of the reasons I do this is because I've actually, everyone I speak to, they're like, if you write a list and then it's like the right thing to do. Like you shouldn't just in your head be like, oh yeah, I would like someone who's kind of like this, kind of like that. Like you should have it like set and like you should know
Really.
for sure.
I agree with that 100%. Like a list of what you want, the qualities, and also your non-negotiables, because
Yeah.
you come across certain people in your life and it really changes your perspective, and you also grow quite often, and certain things change and fluctuate. But the core values that you really, really want, absolutely write them down with full-on details. I tell my friends that all the time who are single.
Literally, because then like when you meet people, you can assess straight away whether they're like worth pursuing or not. Because I think that that's like such a big problem. People go for like lust, but
Mhm.
not for not for the right reason. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
my advice. But so I have my list. My list, I'd say like the most important kind of qualities is like one like being very like open-minded and wanting to grow because I'm always like trying to grow, try new things and things like that. Like it has to be somebody who kind of inspires me to do that more rather than someone I have to drag along. So like as a man, I kind of want somebody who's like more inspiring, like more like knowledgeable than me. Because I find that like allows me to be in my feminine, especially as like an entrepreneur and
Yeah.
somebody who's like taking risks all the time and doing a lot of independent stuff. And I would say like the traditional kind of values are very important to me. So I am a very like strong believer in like the man should like provide, protect, provide like a very secure like place for like his woman and like the woman should very much like when she has like the kids be the person who's like staying at home looking after them and all things like that.
Yeah.
So
I think that's beautiful. And I think that's how, a lot of people change our perspective at times. Like when you see certain things, you're like, oh, maybe it's supposed to be that way. But it's so great that you know exactly what you're looking for, and that and you'll definitely end up attracting that into your life.
yeah, 100%. Like I know for a fact like I would not have it any other way. Like
Yeah.
I find it so important that, for instance, I think a lot of people nowadays would have like a nanny look after their kids while they go off to work. But like I don't see like if you really think about it, like why would I want some other woman to bring up my kids? Like it just doesn't make any sense.
You're speaking
So
my mind, because that's honestly very similar to my thought process as well. I understand that, both parents at times may need to work to have a certain lifestyle. However, I was raised with, my mom always being home with me and really giving me that love and care. And my dad obviously worked. And then when my dad would come home, that's when I would get to spend time with him as well. So both parents were present. And like, I think it's so important to, the child needs so much love. And unfortunately, when the mom is not there, or if the dad is not there, then you have this other person, and this other person might be great, but at the end of the day, it's not your parent. So you really don't know how they are treating your child when you're not around. And they're not going to give that same love and affection.
yeah, 100%. And also, I just think like when it comes to having kids, like I want to be able to teach them everything, make sure that they're like raised well. Like, and if somebody else is in charge of that, like you're obviously, like you said, like you're never going to see 24/7 what's going on. So,
Yeah.
you know, bad habits they could pick up and things like that that you're
Mhm.
not in control of.
Yeah. How do you feel about homeschooling versus sending your child to school?
I think I'm very open-minded to both. Like one thing that I wouldn't be like wanting to do is like I went to a state school, just like a very normal school, like
Yeah.
growing up, and I wouldn't do that. Like I think I really want my kids to like have a different view of like education than like the standard education system.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't want them to kind of go and like get taught and like kind of I don't know, it's a very like newfound concept, but like I don't want them to be like brainwashed into like the whole 9 to 5 lifestyle.
Yeah,
um
yeah.
like and like a lot of things that they kind of teach in school aren't very beneficial for like real life. So
Yeah, no, you're just speaking my mind. Wow. You're living my life traveling. That's awesome. And that's really interesting. And would you want your kids in the future to also travel as much as you are? And would you be taking them around? Because I know some people, once they have kids, they just stay in one place. And then there are certain people where they're like, you know what, I'm going to take my kids everywhere with me.
yeah, I think by the time I have kids, I definitely want to be able to have more of a stable place. But that doesn't mean that like I don't want to travel. Like I just want them to have a home. Because obviously as somebody who I've not had a home for like 3 years, I live out of Airbnbs like constantly.
Yeah,
I do think it's important to have like that safe space and like a place you can go home to. But like yeah, travel 100%. Because I think for me, I had met a lot of people growing up who had traveled as kids, like I had a friend who was like grew up in like Singapore or like Japan and like different places like this, and I could see like the different the open-mindedness that it brought them. And like I think that people who usually spend their whole like upbringing in one place are usually a lot more closed-minded, in my opinion.
absolutely. Yes, yes. They just believe like, okay, within the same radius, within this radius, that's where I'm staying. And I've had conversations with people like that as well. And I'm like, oh, wow, it makes sense, why they are closed-minded. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So like it's so good to get that kind of exposure as at a young age.
Yeah, yeah. And then I guess I also think about it, um, at the end of the day, like whatever makes people happy. And if so, not everyone is as spontaneous and wants to travel. And then there are certain people who are just really comfortable with having a family in one place and staying in one place. But yeah, and I wanted to ask a little bit about, as you mentioned, children and kids and how you would like to bring them up. I mean, as a teacher, I'm really interested and passionate about this topic. So, I wanted to ask you, as far as uh, did you always want to have kids, or is it something that you recently thought like, oh, you know what, I do want to have kids? Because I have friends. The reason why I'm asking that is because I have friends who wanted to be moms since they were like, in high school, and they were like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to have a family. Whereas for me, it was so different. I'm like, I just want to live for myself. Like, I just want to live my life.
I think in my experience, it was more that I always knew I would have kids one day, but I never like pictured it being so. I'd say I knew that I always wanted kids. So like I grew up and I was like, when I have kids, this is like the type of things I want to do with them. This is like I think about things like that. Like I think about
Got
how I
it.
wanted to treat them, like how I'd make Christmas special and things like that.
Oh, that's cute.
But like, yeah, when it got to like I think my 20s and like in my last relationship, before then I kind of thought like maybe in my 30s I'll have kids, like I would live my 20s. And then like my last relationship actually changed my whole perspective in the sense that I then wanted kids like in my 20s because I was like he kind of made me realize that like why not? Like that's such an amazing thing to be able to do. You get to like live like young with them still.
Yeah,
You get to like, meet your grandkids and
yeah,
like it really just depends on like where you're at in life, of course, because in my head before I'd been thinking, but there's all this stuff I want to accomplish. But
yeah,
then I have accomplished so much in the last 3 years that I would say like I'm not far off from being ready.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Obviously, you've been traveling quite often, and as you mentioned, you like know Bali like inside and out. Like you're not new to this game. So when it comes to your experiences, and as you mentioned before, like eat, pray, love, what would be like one big advice that you would have for like your younger self?
My one big advice, I think as a like younger me, I relied on other people and I wanted to like make other people happy and all of this is like other people were a big factor in like all of my decisions.
Mhm.
Whereas I think if I could like advise myself back then, it would be to like just dive into just my own world and just focus on myself like 100%.
Mhm.
It would have probably saved me a lot of like bad decisions along the way.
Yeah, yeah. And then I mean, even the bad decisions, like they're experiences that we learn from, and that's what makes you who you are. And as far as family, because you're traveling, do you miss your family often, or is it, or you're really enjoying this time being on your own?
So I think personally, like, so my family are very in the 9 to 5, like just normal kind of like mindsets and things,
Right.
which is like I love spending time with them. But like obviously for me to be able to keep growing and be on my own journey, I do have to like be around people who are on that same wavelength,
Yeah.
which is obviously why Bali is amazing because there's such an amazing community here of like-minded entrepreneurs who are all growing.
Yeah.
Um, but I go home, I'd say at least like last year I went home at least like 4 times.
And
Um,
home is
this
obviously London, right?
London, yeah. So I'll fly back to London like a lot of times to go
Yeah.
and see family. I actually flew my mum out to come and visit me earlier. She's flying out next week as well. She's gonna come stay with me in Bali. I flew my brother out as well to come and live with me.
Wow.
And within the next like year or two, I plan to like just let my mum and dad like come and live with me on this side of the world as well. So the idea isn't like to distance myself from my family. It's just like a short sacrifice to then like us all be able to um have that kind of freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And now with technology, it makes it so much easier to even communicate. Like, you could just call your parents whenever you want and like obviously FaceTime.
Yeah.
It's not the same as having them in person, but still. And you are settled in Bali now, so you are planning to be there for a while, or are you planning to travel somewhere else soon?
So I don't really plan. I always just like go with it. So I usually like book flights like a week or two before, and I kind of like living like that.
Love that.
I'd say most likely would go home for Christmas. I love spending Christmas time with my family. But yeah, I really don't know. I just take it as it comes.
That's so cool. I love that. I am envious of that life. I feel like when I was younger, I just booked tickets as well, and I was like, "Oh, one-way ticket here, here I go." And then again, like you do get a little comfortable then. Like, I bought my condo out here in Los Angeles, and it's I love the neighborhood I live in. Like, there's a beautiful lake down the street, and I just love waking up here and having my peaceful time. But then the idea of booking a trip to Bali like next week and just being there for a month. I think it's the fear sometimes that holds us back. And for me, the fear is like obviously my mom and dad are here and thank God they're healthy and everything is great. But the idea of just leaving, and I've never actually traveled out of the country by myself. I've definitely been to out of the country with friends, but and obviously within the States, but the idea of like going by myself and stepping out of my comfort zone, I'm absolutely open to the idea. But I would want to at least know one or two people there. Like if I were to like plan Bali, let's say now I have a friend there. So I'll be like, hey, at least I know someone there. But so tell me a little bit about that. Like the first time, as you mentioned, you were like Thailand, right? So
Yeah.
you know anyone there, or were you just like, I'm gonna go by myself?
So I didn't know a single person in Thailand. And I was so scared because I'd never like flown that far before. Like I'd only ever traveled like around Europe and obviously never traveled like for longer than like a week or something and always been with other people.
Yeah.
But I kind of just decided like it was like summer. I didn't have to be in uni, so I was like, okay, my apartment had just run out, like the lease, and I wasn't gonna get another one until like September. So I had like a few months in between, and I was like, Thailand's cheap. Like I can book my flight, I can book a place to stay, and still live cheaper than London. So I was like, let's just do that. And it was amazing. Like I think I probably didn't make too many friends in Thailand, but I didn't really mind. I still caught up with people from home and I just spent like every day by myself and I just learned to like love my own company and be my own best friend.
Did
And
you
I didn't
ever
make
have that fear within you, like the first time traveling, right? Like you're a little lost because you're confused and maybe this feeling of anxiety. Like how did you overcome that?
So I was on my growth journey a lot. So I knew that I wanted to overcome like and put myself in uncomfortable situations to push myself to be a better person. Like I knew at that point, like every time I'd put myself in an uncomfortable situation, it meant that I'd had like such an amazing experience afterwards. And it changed me and made me grow. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing this. And like this just felt like a massive like step in that direction because I knew that that was the kind of life that I would like love to live.
Mhm.
Um, the way that I actually dealt with it was I bought this book and it was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I read it. I would read like a few pages every day for the first like month I was out there. And it gave me so much peace like inside because every day I was just like, I would take what I'd read on them few pages and I would just apply it. So anytime I'd feel like that fear or anxiousness or that scared, like I would use the technique or use that way of thinking to then transform my thoughts. And then, yeah,
I love
it was truly like my best friend for like the whole month, like the whole first
Yeah,
month.
yeah. Well, I'm glad we're recording this because I'll definitely be getting that book and annotate it because I enjoy doing that. And as far as you mentioned, like you took certain passages and you applied them. Not an easy thing to do, especially applying things. Sometimes we read and internalize, but applying and actually like action like is not easy. So I wanted to ask you daily practices. What daily practices aside from reading and analyzing and applying do you have?
Um, so do you mean like to apply it into my life, or do you just mean like what kind of practices it?
So like what kind of practices, such as like some people meditate in the morning,
Okay.
they wake up, like so certain practices like that.
So I would say most days, obviously reading is a big thing. I do affirmation sometimes. So it really depends on the day, but like I find them really helpful to do in the morning. I sometimes do like sleep meditations, which I find like really, really nice. And meditations in general. So in Bali, there's a lot of like places here for like spirituality, healing, breath work, things like that. So I try and immerse myself into that as well. So I'll go to like breathwork workshops and I'll go to like yoga classes and meditation, and all of this is really amazing for your mind.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's mainly it. I watch a lot of podcasts and things like that as well. I just really try and like focus on always staying in um that way of thinking because it's so easy to then slip back and like let go of all them habits and not want to do with them because you're in that other way of thinking. So the more you like stay in that way of thinking, the more it'll be easier than like letting everything go and then having to start again from scratch. So
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You sound exactly like myself. So those are the practices I apply as well. But then again, the consistency matters so much. It can't just be like, oh, like 3 days, like I'm waking up fine and everything is jolly, so I'm not gonna apply it. It's like, no, good days, bad days, you need to apply it every day.
100%.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. I love learning about traveling, and you honestly opened my mind, and I would love to like come visit Bali. That's been on my mind. My girlfriend and I were actually talking about it like just last week. We're like, let's just go to Bali, like book a trip and just go.
Yeah. You should definitely.
Yeah.
It's such a great place to come, especially like for like the spiritual side, like I said. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
definitely
for sure.
recommend.
Thank you.